The groom's black grandmother showed up to the rehearsal dinner, and by the end of the night, half the room wished they never opened their mouths. They were supposed to be celebrating love. That's what everyone kept saying. The signs were up, the flowers were arranged just right, and the upscale venue in Scottsdale, Arizona, was glowing under soft lighting and expensive smiles. It was the night before the wedding, rehearsal dinner time, and everything looked like a fairy tale on the outside. But on the inside, you could already feel the friction. Christopher Reed stood near the bar, buttoning his navy blue blazer. His face looked calm, but his eyes were scanning, always scanning. He'd been raised like that. Watch the room, notice everything, say little unless necessary. "Chris, baby!" Madison Taylor, his bride-to-be, called from across the room, waving her hand with a champagne glass in it. She was glowing, wearing a white satin dress that shimmered under the lights. Her makeup was perfect, hair swept into a soft updo. Her family circled around her like a shield. He smiled at her and started to walk over when someone bumped into his shoulder, hard. "Oh, sorry, didn't see you there," said Aunt Dana, one of Madison's mother's sisters. She barely glanced at him before walking away with her gin and tonic. Chris didn't respond, he just kept walking. He'd learned a long time ago, some things you file away. From the moment the Taylors agreed to host the rehearsal dinner at the exclusive Desert Ridge Club, things had felt off. There was a hierarchy in place, unspoken but real, and he wasn't sitting at the top of it. Neither was anyone from his side of the family. His best man, Dion, leaned in while straightening the collar of his shirt. "You feel that too?" Dion asked in a low voice. Chris nodded once. "Yeah, it's like we're guests at our own wedding." The vibe was off. The music was soft jazz, the wine was flowing, but the room was split. Literally. On one side, the Taylors, Madison's polished upper-middle-class family from Tiburon, California, moneyed, manicured, and mostly white. On the other side, Chris's family, working class, mostly black, dressed well but clearly not part of this country club world. Chris didn't care about any of that, but what he did care about was respect. And something told him, no, warned him, that tonight, respect was going to be in short supply. Carolyn Taylor, Madison's mother, stepped forward with her pearls glinting under the lights. She held a clipboard of all things, and was orchestrating the night like it was a corporate gala. Her tone was sweet, but the edges were razor sharp. "Now remember, everyone, please stick to the seating chart. It's very important that we stay organized tonight." Chris raised an eyebrow. Seating chart? He hadn't seen one. Madison walked up beside him and slid her hand into his. "You okay?" she asked, smiling gently. "Yeah," he said. "Just watching, that's all." She leaned her head against his shoulder for a moment, oblivious to the side glances from a few of her aunts. Everything still looked picture perfect. But then, the sound of heels echoed across the marble floor. Not the kind of dainty tap-tap you'd hear from a boutique stiletto. No, these were church heels. Strong, wide-based, sensible for a woman with bad knees but too much pride to ask for help. Heads turned as Gloria Reed, 82 years old, walked through the doors like she owned the air around her. Floral print dress, matching hat, white gloves, and a purse so big it could have held 3 Bibles and a snack for later. Chris smiled for the first time all evening. "Grandma's here," he whispered. But what was supposed to be a sweet reunion was about to take a sharp left. Because some people in that room didn't think she belonged there at all. Gloria didn't rush. That was never her way. She walked into the rehearsal dinner with the calm of someone who had already lived through too many storms to be rattled by a little wind. Her purse on one arm, her cane in the other, and her chin held high. The kind of posture that says, "I may be old, but I ain't invisible." Chris stepped away from Madison and made a beeline toward her. "Hey now," he said, breaking into a wide grin. "I told you I'd help you up the steps." "Boy, if you don't get out my way and let me walk like the Lord gave me legs," Gloria replied, swatting the air near him with her gloved hand. "You worried about these little 3 steps? I've been walking since your mama was in diapers." People chuckled nearby. A few even smiled. But over by the bar, Carolyn Taylor's lips tightened. Madison's Aunt Renee leaned in and whispered, "Is that the grandmother? The one who raised him?" Carolyn sipped her wine, eyes scanning Gloria from head to toe. "Apparently so. I just didn't expect—" She didn't finish the sentence, but her nose wrinkled slightly, and Renee nodded like they'd shared a secret. Chris helped guide Gloria to the center of the room, offering his arm, not because she needed it, but because he wanted to. They sat her down near the edge of the main table, or so he thought. Carolyn approached, clipboard in hand. "Oh, hi, Gloria, is it?" she asked, using the tone people reserve for preschool teachers and delivery drivers. "We actually had you at table 6, just over there in the corner. I'm so sorry for the mix-up." Gloria blinked. "Corner?" "Yes, just over there by the window. Beautiful view. We just wanted to keep things cozy." Chris narrowed his eyes. "She's the groom's grandmother. She should be at the head table." Carolyn gave a tight smile. "Oh, of course. It's just, there's limited space, and we had to fit in the wedding planner and the officiant, and, well, it got complicated." Gloria patted Chris's hand. "It's all right, baby. I can sit wherever they put me. The seat don't make the woman." Madison walked up at that moment, clearly sensing the tension. "What's going on?" Carolyn turned with a fake laugh. "Nothing at all, sweetheart. Just some minor seating confusion. We'll get it all sorted." Gloria gave Madison a soft, long look. "You look beautiful, baby." "Thank you, Miss Gloria," Madison said awkwardly, then turned to Chris. "Let's just go with the flow, okay?" Chris didn't answer right away. His jaw tensed slightly, but he nodded. Gloria, ever the peacemaker, took her seat at table 6. But it wasn't over, not even close. As the evening went on, it became obvious that the Reed side of the family was being treated more like hired help than loved ones. Every time someone from his side walked past the Taylor table, the whispering picked up. Eyes rolled, smirks exchanged. Chris caught it all. So did Dion. "This ain't right, man," Dion muttered while filling his plate at the buffet. "I'm trying to behave, but they actin' like we crashed the party." "You're not imagining it," Chris said, still watching. "They think they're better." Meanwhile, over at her lonely table, Gloria picked at her salad while 3 empty chairs sat around her. No one from the Taylor family had spoken more than 2 words to her all night. A few of Chris's cousins sat with her for a while, but they'd been called over for pictures and had to leave her sitting alone again. Madison seemed to be floating between the 2 worlds, laughing with her cousins one moment, hugging Chris's aunt the next. But she didn't seem to notice the cracks forming. Chris noticed. He noticed when Aunt Dana walked past Gloria and muttered, "Tacky dress, bless her heart." He noticed when someone took a picture of the main table and deliberately cropped Gloria out of the frame. And he noticed that for all her poise and patience, Gloria looked tired. But if they thought disrespecting her wouldn't cost them, they had no idea who they were messing with or how deep her story ran. The jokes weren't even whispered anymore. By the time dessert was served, some tiny vanilla bean thing with edible gold on top, the Taylor side of the room had made Grandma Gloria the centerpiece of their conversation. Not in admiration, not in curiosity, in ridicule. "She really wore gloves," Aunt Renee said, eyes wide, "to a rehearsal dinner?" "Oh, honey, she thinks she's at Easter service," Aunt Dana replied, setting her wineglass down. "I half expected her to pull out a tambourine." They all laughed, loud, careless. Chris heard it, again. He stood frozen next to the table, pretending to sip his water, his ears burning. His cousins had noticed too. Javon, his younger cousin from Oakland, leaned in and said, "They really clowning Grandma like that? Man, I could say something." "Don't," Chris said quietly. "Not here. Not now." He looked across the room where Gloria sat alone again, slowly eating her dessert with a small plastic spoon because someone had forgotten to bring her proper silverware. Or maybe they just hadn't bothered. One of the waiters, a young guy named Marcus, noticed and quickly swapped it out, apologizing softly. Gloria smiled and thanked him like she didn't notice the looks. But she noticed. Oh, she noticed. "I wore this dress to your mother's wedding," she said as Chris returned to check on her. He sat beside her, silent. "She didn't have much, but she had love. And I wore this same dress because I thought maybe love would mean something here too." Chris swallowed hard. "It does mean something, Grandma. To me. To all of us." Gloria glanced toward the table of Taylors. Not to them. He followed her gaze and saw Carolyn laughing again, laughing hard at something Uncle Doug had just whispered into her ear. Chris didn't have to hear it. He knew who the joke was about. Meanwhile, Madison stood in the corner, posing for selfies with her bridesmaids, the glow of her dress and perfect hair reflecting in every flash. She looked happy, but she also looked separate, as if her side of the room was its own planet. Chris excused himself and walked out onto the patio. The desert air was warm, dry, still. He needed that stillness to gather himself, to decide whether to cause a scene or keep swallowing the disrespect for the sake of peace. Dion followed him outside. "You good?" "No," Chris said bluntly. "What do you want to do?" Chris stared out at the glowing cactus garden, quiet for a beat. They don't know who she is, what she's done, what she's sacrificed. Dion nodded slowly. Then maybe they should. Inside, someone clinked a glass. Carolyn stood with her clipboard again. "All right, everyone. Time for toasts. If you'd like to say a few words to our beautiful couple, now's your chance." Madison cheered and clapped. People started grabbing their phones to record. Chris looked at Dion. "I'm saying something." Dion put a hand on his shoulder. "Do it." As they walked back inside, Gloria looked up at Chris. Her eyes were soft. "Don't fight nobody. I've been through too much already." Chris kissed her cheek. "No fights, just truth." He approached the mic as Carolyn handed it over with a fake smile plastered on her face. "Oh, are you giving the first toast?" Chris nodded, took the mic, and turned to face the room. The room went quiet. Phones came up, eyebrows raised. And Gloria? She sat a little straighter in her chair, but none of them were ready for what Chris was about to say, not even Madison. Chris stood there with the microphone in hand, letting the silence do half the work. He scanned the room, not rushing, not flinching, just taking in the faces of the people who had laughed, whispered, and judged. He cleared his throat. "I wasn't planning to say anything tonight, but watching this room, watching how some people have been treated, I can't stay quiet anymore." There was a slight shuffle at the main table. Carolyn's smile wavered. Madison's eyes darted toward him. "I want to talk about a woman," Chris said. "A woman who came here tonight, not for food, not for attention, not even for the dress code. She came because she loves me." People looked around, confused at first, unsure where this was going. "I want to talk about Gloria Reed, my grandmother. That's her over there." All heads turned. Gloria didn't move. She didn't blink, just stared straight ahead like she knew exactly what was coming. Chris continued. "When I was 6 years old, both my parents died in a car accident on I-10. A drunk driver ran a red light. Everything changed in a single night." Madison's smile vanished. She didn't know he was going to bring that up. "Gloria took me in, no hesitation, no questions, just love. At the time, she was working nights at a cleaning company in Phoenix, scrubbing office buildings till her knees gave out. Then she'd come home, nap for 2 hours, and get me ready for school. Every day, for years." Nobody spoke. Even the servers had stopped moving. "She taught me how to tie a tie, how to treat women, how to fight with my mind, not my fists. She made $1,200 an hour and still managed to pay for my Little League uniforms, school lunches, and my cap and gown." Chris swallowed hard. "And the dress she's wearing tonight? That's not just fabric. That's the same dress she wore when I graduated college. And before that, when she stood in a courtroom and fought for custody of me against relatives who didn't want the burden." He paused. "That dress is history. That woman is strength. And the way some of y'all treated her tonight?" His voice cracked slightly. "You embarrassed her. You made fun of her clothes. You sat her in a corner like she was an afterthought. But without her, there is no me. Without her, there is no wedding." Now the room was dead silent. Not even a glass clinked. Chris took a breath. You don't have to like how she talks. You don't have to understand why she wears gloves. But you will respect her. Carolyn shifted in her seat, her face stiff. Aunt Renee looked down at her plate. Madison stood frozen near the bridesmaids, lips slightly parted. She hadn't realized how deep this ran. Chris glanced at Gloria. She looked calm, but her eyes were shiny. "I'm not angry," Chris said. "I'm disappointed. And I needed y'all to hear who she is, because for most of my life, she carried everything, on her back, in her hands, and in her heart." He paused again, softer this time. "And tonight, I needed to carry some of that for her." He set the mic down gently and walked straight to Gloria's table. He bent down, kissed her hand, and pulled out a chair for himself right beside her. The room still hadn't moved. Gloria whispered to him, "You didn't have to do that, baby." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." But just because the truth had been spoken didn't mean everyone in that room was ready to listen. Because shame has a way of bringing either silence or fire. For a few seconds, nobody dared breathe too loud. Chris had said what needed saying, but the fallout hung in the air like smoke. Everyone looked around, waiting for someone else to break the tension. The DJ fidgeted near his laptop. The servers paused mid-step. The vibe had gone from elegant to exposed. Madison was the first to speak. She walked slowly to the front of the room, past her wide-eyed bridesmaids, past Carolyn, who still hadn't moved. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor until she stood next to Chris. He didn't look at her, not yet. She took the mic, her voice quieter than usual. "I didn't know," she said. "I mean, I knew bits and pieces, but not all of it." She turned to Gloria. "Miss Gloria, I owe you an apology, not just for how my family treated you tonight, but for not asking more questions, for not learning who you really are." Gloria nodded once, gracious but silent. Carolyn finally stood up, brushing invisible lint off her beige designer blouse like it helped her regain control. "Well, I think we've all had a very emotional evening," she said, trying to smile, "and maybe things were said in the heat of—" "You put her at table 6, Chris said sharply, still not raising his voice. Carolyn blinked. It was just a seating mistake. These things happen." "No," Madison interrupted. "It wasn't a mistake. You didn't think she fit." The room got quiet again, and then Gloria spoke. "I've been not fittin' for 82 years, she said, slow and steady. "Ain't nothing new." People chuckled softly, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Gloria continued, "But let me tell y'all something. Love don't care how much money you got. It don't care what club you belong to, or if your pearls match your smile. Love is about showing up. And I showed up." She looked around the room, deliberate, clear-eyed. "And I'll keep showing up. For him. For her, too, if she lets me." Madison stepped closer and took Gloria's hand. "I want you there. Every step." Gloria's face softened just a bit. "Then I'll be there, baby." Chris watched them, chest tight. Not from sadness, but from the strange relief of being seen. Then something unexpected happened. Carolyn, still rigid, walked over to Gloria. Her jaw clenched like every step took effort. She stopped just a foot away, her voice quieter than before. "I didn't mean to offend you." Gloria met her eyes. "But you did." Carolyn looked down, then back up. "I did." The words were small but real. Gloria nodded. "That's a start." Silence again, but it was different this time, softer. Like the first moment after a storm when the rain finally lets up and you're not sure if it's really over yet. Aunt Renee stood and raised her glass. "Well," she said awkwardly, "to family, I guess?" Chris didn't toast, neither did Madison, but Gloria lifted her water and said, "To growth." The crowd followed her lead, slowly, quietly, glasses raised, sips taken. The rehearsal dinner didn't go back to normal after that. It never would. But it also didn't go completely off the rails. People started talking, not whispering, not judging, but really talking. A few even came over to Gloria, shook her hand, asked questions. Chris didn't leave her side the rest of the evening. Later, as they walked out together under the stars, Gloria looked up at her grandson. "You ready for tomorrow?" Chris nodded. "Yeah. You?" She smiled. "I've been ready since the day I saw you in that hospital crib. This ain't nothing but the next chapter." But tomorrow would only work if tonight's lesson stuck, because love without respect is just decoration, and decoration don't last long. The next day, the sky over Scottsdale was wide and cloudless, the kind of blue that felt honest, unforgiving but honest. Guests arrived early, some wearing sunglasses and pressed linen. Others just stood in quiet clusters, still chewing on everything that had happened the night before. Chris stood outside the chapel in a dark suit, hands clasped, looking out over the walkway. His mind wasn't on the photographer setting up. It wasn't on the wedding playlist or the boutonniere pinching his collar. He was thinking about Gloria. Inside, she was already seated, front row this time. No mix-ups, no excuses, and no corner table. She wore the same dress, same gloves, same hat. But today, it wasn't questioned. Today, it was honored. Because today, everyone in that room knew who she was. Carolyn Taylor sat a few seats down. Quiet, not cold, just reflective. Her usual crowd didn't gossip or whisper like they had before. Instead, they kept their eyes forward and their mouths mostly shut. Respect had entered the room, and it didn't ask permission first. When the music began and Madison stepped into the doorway, her eyes immediately searched for Chris. She found him, and in that moment, everything else faded. The tension, the ego, the mess, it all stepped aside to let something pure walk through. As they said their vows, Chris made sure to speak clearly, to speak directly, not just to Madison, but with a glance toward Gloria. Because he knew this wasn't just about two people falling in love. It was about the foundation that love stood on, and hers was poured in sweat and sacrifice. After the ceremony, the reception kicked off in a ballroom full of new energy. Dayon raised his glass during his speech, this time with a smile that didn't feel forced. To the ones who raised us when they didn't have to, he said. To the ones who worked 2 shifts so we could chase dreams. And to Grandma Gloria, the real OG of this wedding. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. Gloria laughed too, head back, eyes closed, the kind of laugh that said, "I still got joy in me." Even Carolyn stood and clapped. Later, she approached Gloria again, not for show this time, not for the cameras. She came alone, hands folded, no clipboard in sight. "I've been thinking," she began, "about how much I didn't know." Gloria looked at her calmly. "Knowing takes work." "I want to try," Carolyn said, "not just for appearances, for real." Gloria studied her. "Then come by the house sometime. I'll show you how to make fried cabbage and real cornbread, but you gotta leave those wine spritzers at home." Carolyn chuckled, surprised at herself. "Deal." Chris saw it all from across the room, and for the first time since they started planning the wedding, he felt something deep in his chest start to loosen. It wasn't just that the event was going well, it was that something had shifted. The air between these two families felt different now. Not perfect, but open. Madison took his hand and whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah," he said, squeezing her fingers gently. "Now I am." They walked over to Gloria and sat beside her. For a while they didn't say anything, just sat. Let the music play, let the people dance. Because some moments don't need words, just presence, just love. And for once, nobody in the room questioned whether Gloria belonged. She always had. They just finally caught up. Because when you dishonor someone who's carried generations, you risk losing the roots that keep the whole tree standing. And sometimes, it takes one moment of truth to remind folks where they come from and who they owe everything to. Moral of the story? Don't wait until someone's gone to respect what they built. If they carried you here, honor them loudly while they can still hear it. If you felt something in this story, share it with someone who needs to be reminded to pick up the phone, say thank you, or simply show up. Some people are worth more than you'll ever know.